The military had taught me many things. How to stand still while chaos screamed around me. How to make decisions when fear clawed at my throat. How to carry 50 pounds of gear across broken ground and still keep moving. How to bury pain beneath posture, discipline, and silence. What it never taught me was how to bury a husband. Or how to explain to my daughter why the man we loved had died with secrets stitched into every corner of his life. 2 weeks after Grant Whitaker was lowered into frozen earth beneath a gray Maine sky, I still had not cried. Not because I didn't want to. Because if I started, I was afraid I would never stop. And because grief, like war, waits until you are alone. The funeral had been crowded with polished lies. He was a wonderful man. He lived for his family. He never thought of himself. People said these things while sipping coffee from paper cups and checking watches beneath black sleeves. I stood beside the casket in a dark dress that fit too tightly across the shoulders. My 19-year-old daughter, Piper, stood beside me like a blade someone had forgotten to sheath. She did not cry. She stared at the folded flag resting near the flowers and looked as if she wanted answers from it. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were red. Every few minutes, she glanced at me with a hurt so sharp it felt like an accusation. You knew him better than I did. I wanted to tell her the truth. I didn't know him at all. Not the final version of him. Not the man who spent nights awake in his office. Not the man who erased browser histories. Not the man who stepped outside to take calls and came back smelling of cold air and stress. Not the man who owned a private island and never once told his wife. 14 days later, Piper and I sat in the office of Neil Porter, Grant's attorney. The room smelled like dust, leather, and old money. Sunlight fought through half-closed blinds and painted long bars across the floor. Neil Porter had the kind of face that looked born apologetic. He adjusted his glasses 3 times before speaking. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said quietly, "your husband left specific posthumous instructions. I was to wait exactly 14 days after burial before contacting you." "Why 14? Piper snapped. Neil swallowed. "He didn't say." "Of course he didn't," she muttered. Neil slid a black portfolio across the desk. Inside was a velvet box. I opened it. A brass key lay nestled inside dark fabric. Heavy. Old. Real. Attached was a blue enamel tag. Granite Harbor Island. For a moment, the room lost sound. I read the words again. Island. Not property. Not cabin. Not a land parcel. Island. My husband had owned an island. Neil cleared his throat. He repurchased it 3 years ago. Taxes and maintenance are prepaid for 5 years. Ownership transfers to you effective immediately. Piper laughed once, a short, sharp sound. Repurchased, she said. Meaning he owned it before? Yes. And no one thought this was worth mentioning? Neil looked miserable. Your father insisted on confidentiality. I turned the tag over in my hand. Cold brass. Sharp edges. What is on the island? There is also a message, Neil said. He handed me an envelope. My name was written in Grant's unmistakable handwriting. Straight lines. Perfect spacing. Military neatness from a man who had never served but always admired order. I opened it. Sloan. If you are reading this, I am gone. I owe you more apologies than can fit on paper. The island is yours now. Go there before you decide anything. Before you trust anyone. On the desk in the main study, you'll find a hard drive. Password. The date we met plus your maiden name. Trust Owen Hale. He'll be waiting. Do not trust Mara. I read the last sentence twice. Grant's older sister. Mara Whitaker. Elegant. Charming. Financially reckless. A woman who could hug you and inventory the room at the same time. Piper leaned over my shoulder. Why would Dad write that? Neil inserted a USB drive into his computer. Grant's face appeared on screen. Healthy. Strong. Months before cancer hollowed him. My breath caught. He looked straight into the camera. Sloan, if this is playing, then I ran out of time. His voice filled the room. I know what this feels like. Betrayal. Anger. Confusion. You deserve all of it. Piper's hands clenched. I bought Granite Harbor back because I needed one place Mara couldn't poison. One place I could prepare. He paused, eyes dropping briefly. She will come for the estate. She's drowning in debt. She may use Piper. She may say I promised things. I did not. He looked directly at me again. The evidence is there. The truth is there. Then softer. I loved you both badly sometimes, but completely. The screen went black. No one moved. Piper whispered first. He knew he was dying. Yes, I said. He knew all this was coming. Yes. And he still didn't tell us. No answer I could give would survive the truth. By the time we left Neil's office, grief had changed shape. It was no longer a funeral wait. It was a mission. The Navy had trained me to compartmentalize. Feel later. Move now. I called in every favor left from 22 years of service and reserve transition. Emergency family matter. Temporary leave approved. Piper packed in silence. I packed efficiently. Laptop. Documents. Flashlight. Sidearm license paperwork. Clothing. Chargers. At midnight, Mara texted. Thinking of you both. Let me help. I stared at the message. Then blocked her number. Piper unblocked it 10 minutes later. I found out only because her phone lit up on the kitchen counter. Aunt Mara, your mother doesn't know everything. I looked at Piper. She met my eyes without shame. What if she's telling the truth, she said. What if she's counting on you asking that? I replied. Neither of us apologized. Maine in early spring has a cold that feels personal. We flew north under bruised clouds and hired a ferry from a small harbor town where everyone seemed to know Grant's name, but none volunteered details. The captain loaded our bags and nodded toward the sea. Granite Harbor's a hard place, he said. Meaning? Meaning it decides who stays. I almost smiled. Good. So do I. The island rose from fog like something ancient and disapproving. Dark pines. Jagged rock. White spray striking cliffs. At the northern point stood a lighthouse, tall and severe. Near the dock waited a broad-shouldered man in his 50s with weathered skin and steady eyes. Hands behind back. Feet planted shoulder width. He carried himself like someone who had once answered to rank. Commander Mercer, he called. I stopped. No one used that title casually. Yes. Owen Hale. We shook hands. His grip was firm, controlled. Your husband said you'd come when the clock ran out. Did he often speak in riddles? When he was scared. That answer unsettled me more than anything yet. The main house overlooked the eastern cove. Stone walls. Steel beams. Glass facing the ocean. Built like a fortress pretending to be architecture. Inside, everything was immaculate. No dust. No neglect. Someone had cared for this place daily. Owen set our bags down. Coffee's fresh. Generators tested. Heat's on. You live here. In the caretaker cottage. How long have you worked for my husband? 8 years. 8 years. Almost half a decade of marriage secrets after that. Piper let out a bitter laugh and walked away. I turned back to Owen. What aren't you saying? He held my gaze. That he was trying to protect you. From what? He glanced toward the windows. People who smile while they steal. That night I couldn't sleep. The house creaked in the wind like an old ship. At 2:13 a.m., I heard footsteps overhead. I moved silently, opened the study door. Piper stood at the desk holding a framed photograph. Grant taught her to fish at age 8. She didn't turn around. Did he ever lie to you? She asked. Yes. When? Apparently for years. She set the frame down carefully. I keep trying to remember if I missed signs. You were a child. So were you, she said, finally facing me. That landed cleanly. I took the hit. No, I said. I was not. She sat in the desk chair. I'm angry at him, she whispered. But every time I feel it, I hate myself. I crossed the room and stood beside her. You're allowed to be angry at the dead. Are you? Yes. Then why haven't you cried? Because if I cry, I may admit I chose wrong. Because if I cry, I may forgive him. Because if I cry, I may still love him exactly the same. I'm busy, I said instead. She rolled her eyes through tears. Then unexpectedly, she leaned into me. I held her. For the first time since the hospital. The hard drive was where Grant said it would be. Locked in the center drawer. Password entry flashed on the screen. Date we met plus maiden name. 0614 Mercer. Accepted. Folders opened. Banks. Legal. Video. Mara. Piper. If I'm too late. My pulse quickened. We opened Mara first. Dozens of files. Wire transfers. Loan defaults. Emails. Forged signatures. Investor pitches using Grant's name. Promises of access to strategic island holdings. She had sold dreams tied to property she didn't own. And worse. Draft guardianship paperwork naming herself trustee over Piper if Grant became incapacitated. She tried to position herself for everything I said. Piper stared at the screen. She came to every chemo appointment. Predators often come close to the wound. The next morning, Owen found the boathouse lock broken. No boat is missing. No equipment taken. Whoever entered knew what they wanted and either found it or didn't. I examined pry marks. Professional leverage. Fast work. 2 sets of boot prints in damp silt. Different sizes. Local police? Piper asked. Not yet. Why not? Because if this ties to Mara, I want to know what they came for before I scare them off. She looked at me strangely. Mom, were you always like this? Like what? Terrifyingly calm. I almost laughed. No. I practiced. Over the next 3 days, Granite Harbor transformed from mystery into revelation. Beneath the old lighthouse, hidden behind a steel service door, was a bunker. Inside, monitors, encrypted servers, battery backups, maps, scanners, file cabinets. Grant called it, in one handwritten note, the war room. I sat in the chair at the center console and felt 2 competing truths collide. My husband had lied to me. My husband had prepared for battle. Both were real. Owen stood nearby. He built this after Mara started borrowing in his name. Why not expose her then? He wanted proof no lawyer could wriggle around. And why keep me ignorant? Owen hesitated. Because he believed if you knew, you'd confront her directly. He was right. And he believed she'd strike harder if she knew you were involved. I hated that he was also right. Piper turned out to be brilliant with systems. Within hours, she understood network layouts better than I did. She rerouted cameras, changed credentials, and set motion alerts. Watching her work, I saw Grant's mind in her hands. That hurt in a strange, proud way. Late one afternoon, she said quietly, Dad taught me coding when I was 14. I looked up. He told me not to tell you. Why? He said you already carried enough. That was Grant's disease. He called it secrecy protection. He called distance sacrifice. He called control love. And sometimes he meant it. On the 4th night, Mara called. Private number. I answered on speaker. Sloan, she said warmly. I've been worried sick. That must be exhausting. A pause. Where are you? Why? I'd like to come help sort Grant's affairs. Bring handcuffs. Saves time. Piper snorted despite herself. Mara's tone cooled. You always were dramatic. And you always were expensive. I know about the island, she said. Grant intended Piper to have it. Excellent. She inherited half through me eventually. You think this is a joke? Investors are asking questions. There it was. Not grief. Exposure. I leaned closer to the phone. I have your forged notary seals, fraudulent transfers, and guardianship drafts. If you step on this dock, I'll have deputies waiting. Silence. Then poison. He died disappointed in you. Piper stiffened. I answered before the wound could land. No, I said. He died scared of you. I ended the call. Piper stared at me, then smiled for the first time in weeks. Okay, she said. That was incredible. But war has a way of charging interest later. That night, I found a folder labeled if I'm too late. Inside was one video. Grant appeared thinner this time. Bald from treatment. Eyes sunken but bright. He looked directly into the camera. If you open this, then things escalated. He coughed hard, regained breath. Sloan. I know you hate being managed. You should. I sat motionless. I didn't tell you because every time I imagined burdening you with this while you were still serving, I saw what it would cost. You'd choose us over your career without hesitation. He smiled sadly. And I was selfish enough to want you to keep one thing that was only yours. My throat tightened. I know how that sounds now. He looked down. I also know I was afraid you'd see me differently. Weak. Gullible. Cowardly. I whispered at the screen, never weak. He continued. Mara learned early that charm can rent trust. I kept trying to save her privately. She kept converting mercy into leverage. He inhaled shakily. If there's any grace left for me, tell Piper I was proud of her every single day. Then, I loved you before I deserved to. The video ended. I stared at black glass until dawn. And finally, after 2 weeks of stone, I cried. Quietly. Violently. Alone. Morning found Piper in the kitchen making terrible coffee. She glanced at my swollen eyes and said nothing. Then she poured me a cup. It was awful. I drank every drop. I watched another video, I said. She leaned on the counter. Was it honest? Yes. Did it fix anything? No. She nodded. That sounds like Dad. We both laughed, then unexpectedly both cried. There are moments when families heal not through speeches, but through simultaneous collapse. This was one of them. 2 days later, a storm rolled in hard. Wind bent trees. Sea hammered rock. At 11:40 p.m., perimeter alarm. Dockside motion. I was up instantly. Owen met me in the corridor with a flashlight and an old shotgun. Piper appeared behind us. No. Yes, she said. No. I'm not 12. Stay in the bunker and monitor feeds. She hesitated, then nodded. Good call. We moved through the rain toward the dock. 2 figures in dark gear are cutting a chain at a storage shed. Not thieves. Search team. I stepped from cover. Hands where I can see them. One ran. The other swung a flashlight like a club. Owen tackled him cleanly. I chased the runner across slick boards and down toward the rocks. He slipped, crashed hard, and tried to rise. I pinned him face down and zip-tied his wrists with cord from my pocket. Always carry a cord. Back in the house, under bright lights, the intruder turned out to be 23 years old and terrified. Name, Caleb. Hired cash by a woman from Portland to retrieve documents. Showed a photo. Mara. Of course. What documents? I asked. He swallowed. She said if I found a red ledger, I'd get 10 grand. Owen and I exchanged a look. There is no red ledger, he said. Grant had planted bait. Even dead, he was still laying traps. By morning, I called the county sheriff. This time with evidence ready. Deputies took Caleb and copies of the files. Within 48 hours, warrants were issued. Fraud. Forgery. Conspiracy. Mara disappeared before her arrest. Then resurfaced exactly where narcissists always do. At our front door. She arrived on the island in a hired boat, wearing cream wool and indignation. I met her on the dock. Piper and Owen stood behind me. Mara looked older than I remembered. Still beautiful. Beauty can survive rot surprisingly long. You called the police on family, she said. No, I replied. I called them about the crime. You have no idea what Grant promised me. I have emails. You think paper knows blood? I think signatures know prison. Her face hardened. You were always his mistake. Piper stepped forward. Say one more thing about my mother, she said calmly, and you'll leave this island swimming. Mara blinked. The last time she had seen Piper, she was a child. Children eventually become witnesses. Then deputies stepped off the second boat behind her. Sheriff Donnelly removed his hat. Mara Whitaker? For once, she had no script. As they led her away, she turned to me. He lied to you too. I held her gaze. Yes, I said. And unlike you, he was sorry. The house felt larger after she left. Cleaner. Even the air seemed less crowded. Legal proceedings took months. Most ended quickly once files surfaced. Investors recovered portions through seized assets. Mara accepted a plea deal. Probation, restitution, disgrace. Sometimes justice wears handcuffs. Sometimes it wears headlines. Summer came slowly to Granite Harbor. Piper and I stayed. What began as a necessity became a choice. We repaired fences, repainted rooms, cataloged documents, burned boxes of meaningless clutter. kept letters worth keeping. Some nights we cooked badly and laughed well. Some nights, we sat on the cliff in silence. Healing often resembles boredom before it resembles joy. Owen taught Piper navigation by stars. I taught her how to shoot responsibly, patch drywall, and negotiate contracts. She taught me how to use 3 software programs and admit when I was wrong. Equal exchange. One afternoon, while clearing the attic, I found a cedar chest. Inside was a stack of notebooks. Grant's journals. I almost closed the lid, then opened the first page. Year 1 of marriage. Today, Sloane laughed so hard at breakfast she snorted coffee. I would defend that sound against armies. Year 5. She deploys next month. I tell people I'm proud. Truth, I'm terrified of how much of my breath lives in another body. Year 11. Piper beat me at chess and celebrated like a pirate king. Year 15. I keep too much from them because I fear losing them. Strange how fear disguises itself as logic. Last entry. If love were measured by confidence, I failed often. If by devotion, I hope they know. I sat on attic floorboards with dust and sunlight around me and wept for a man who had loved deeply and badly at the same time. That contradiction was the whole truth. In August, Piper asked to stay through winter. College can wait 1 semester, she said. You sure? I spent months thinking this family was ending. She looked toward the lighthouse. Maybe it's just changing. So we stayed. We turned the bunker into a maritime research archive and community emergency center for the mainland harbor during storms. Piper built the website. Owen coordinated volunteers. I handled grants, logistics, and people who mistook confidence for masculinity. Grant's fortress became something useful. That felt right. On the 1st anniversary of his death, we held no ceremony. No flowers. No speeches. Just dinner. 3 plates out of habit. Then 2. Piper noticed and quietly removed the 3rd. We ate lobster rolls on the porch while gulls screamed overhead. Afterward, she handed me a folded note. What's this? Something I wrote. Read later. That night I opened it. Mom, I blamed you because blaming someone felt easier than missing him. I blamed him because loving someone flawed hurts. I blamed myself because grief is stupid like that. Thank you for staying when I was cruel. Thank you for fighting when I was lost. Thank you for showing me that strength can apologize and still be strong. Love. Piper. I carried the note outside. The lighthouse beams swept across dark water. For years, I had believed endurance was the highest form of strength. Stand firm. Don't bend. Don't break. But endurance is only half of it. The other half is softness after survival. The willingness to trust again. To forgive without forgetting. To love imperfect people, including yourself. Months later, when snow covered the island in white silence, Piper asked the question we had both avoided. Do you forgive him? I looked at the sea. No, I said first. Then reconsidered. Not as a single act. She waited. I forgive him in pieces. For what? For being scared. For hiding. For thinking control was care. For leaving me puzzles instead of conversations. I smiled faintly. And for making me run a data center in a bunker. She laughed. Do you still love him? Yes. That easy. No, I said. That permanent. She slipped her hand into mine the way she had as a child crossing streets. We watched snow move sideways in the wind. Then she asked quietly, do you forgive yourself? That was harder. For missing signs. For being absent. For choosing duty so often. For mistaking resilience for intimacy. I answered honestly. I'm learning. She squeezed my hand. Good. Years later, people would ask why I never sold Granite Harbor. The taxes were manageable. Offers were absurd. Developers circled like gulls. I always declined. Because some places become more than land. That island held the wreckage of lies. But it also held truth dragged into light. It held the moment my daughter stopped being my child and became my equal. It held the night I cried. The morning I laughed again. The season of grief became purpose. The day a dead man's final mistakes became our second chance. So no, I never sold it. I rebuilt there. And that made all the difference. If you had seen me at the funeral, Face carved from stone beside a flag-draped coffin, you would have thought I was unbreakable. You would have been wrong. I was broken in 10 places. But broken things are not finished things. Sometimes they are only waiting for honest hands, patient time, and the courage to begin again. The military taught me how to survive a collapse. My husband's secrets taught me how to confront it. My daughter taught me how to heal after it. And Granite Harbor, cold, jagged, unforgiving Granite Harbor, taught me that even the hardest ground can grow something beautiful once the storm has passed.